Hello, and welcome to day 15 of the One Health Awareness Month. So today's topic is on encroachment and loss of biodiversity. I'm going to focus more on encroachment. In all honesty, those two go hand in hand. But I'm going to focus a little bit more on encroachment during this recording here. So when I think back to elementary school, junior high, high school, and when I think of how encroachment was defined, it was primarily in a sense of, especially, it seemed to always pertain to the Amazon. That's where I heard about it the most. But it always seemed to pertain to, well, you have a farm and they encroach, they move in on an area with, say, with grazing cattle that they typically wouldn't graze on, and they overtake an area of wildlife or an area of refuge, which could mean loss of habitat, loss of feeding source, etc. So what happens with those animals? Well, those wildlife are essentially flushed out. It can be into urban areas, or it could mean that they die off because we've eliminated a food source or a place where they den or they sleep. So it's always pertained to those type of areas. That encroachment has to do with moving onto their territory and this immediate obvious effect, right? You know, it'd be like if someone broke into your home and you suddenly had a squatter. That's immediate obvious effect that someone's trying to take your home. They've encroached. But the picture is much bigger than that and is actually much more dangerous than that. One of the concerns is something that's called spillover. And a spillover effect or spillover event occurs when, let's say, we'll use a similar example, that a cattle operator moves their cattle near an area that is primarily wildlife. So it's not a typical grazing area. They end up encroaching on some area where certain wildlife or let's say it's a bat population that feeds something that feeds in that area, and now their potential for transmission of a disease, a spillover effect from that animal. Now, what's commonly occurs in that situation is you have a disease that may do no harm to that particular animal. Okay, I'm talking about the host animal. It could do absolutely no harm at all to that wild animal that has that disease. But when they transmit it to something like cattle, it mutates and turns into something that could be the complete opposite. It could decimate that population. It could be something that could spread to people. So when you encroach on something, when you have livestock that encroaches on a wild population, the concern is disease transmission. If this subject is totally new to you, I can tell you it's incredibly interesting. This has happened more than you probably realize. One of the famous, that I would say is probably the most famous encroachment issues would be that the theory, the HIV/AIDS, has actually was from a spillover event or be multiple events. So the belief is that patient 0 with HIV/AIDS, that it actually came from non-human primates. It was believed to be out of Western Africa, and that during hunting or poaching, that something like the simian immunodeficiency virus, or SIV, so I'm going to say it again, simian immunodeficiency virus, or SIV, that doesn't always cause symptoms in non-human primates, mutated when it came into contact with a person and has created what we know today as HIV/AIDS. Now, I am simplifying this hugely because there are actually different strains of HIV/AIDS. You can tell by strain of which area of the world it could possibly come from, or how someone acquired it. I'm simplifying it dramatically here. The only thing I really am focusing on, and I'm trying to make a point here, is that patient 0, the very first cases of HIV/AIDS, were believed to be from zoonotic or spillover events. Okay? So you have areas where people had encroached, in this case poached animals, and this is the end result that we have today. So this is a huge concern. Ebola is another example of this. And when there was the Ebola outbreak a few years ago, they believe it had started from bushmeat. And then because of various rituals that take place, like with burial, it just could not get under control. And then unfortunately, it killed a lot of people or made a lot of people very, very sick. So when we think of encroachment or moving into an area that we typically wouldn't move into, it's not just about the concern of taking a habitat. This is definitely a One Health topic. And the concern becomes, okay, well, what diseases that could be endemic? So endemic means in that population, it's for whatever reason we cannot get rid of whatever that disease is. So it becomes, for lack of way of saying it, better way of saying it, it becomes a naturally occurring disease. It's just in this area or this population. So now we're moving something that could have a naive immune system, like our cattle, goats, poultry, us, right? If we're encroaching onto it, that we're now coming in contact with a disease where our immune systems are naive and have never encountered it, and we really don't know what's going to happen or what that effect's going to be. So this is why, too, that One Health really encompasses, it's not just human health. So this, in this case, talking about like with HIV/AIDS, we're talking about primarily human at this point transmission. If we were talking about Ebola, of course, treated by human health professionals. We're not even just talking about the veterinarians to help keep that cattle safe or whatever the animal safe. But this is why it's important with One Health that we have the human health, veterinary professionals, and environmental scientists, because they have a huge part of this, of what of issues with spillover effect or issues with wildlife that could transmit disease. Now, if you remember, if you've seen the very first video, I had really briefly kind of just hit on the fact of avian influenza and climate causes. And I'm not gonna go into great detail. I'm basically gonna repeat that. So when you have a potential, we'll say a change in where animals migrate because of climate, maybe they typically would not have migrated to a certain area, but see climate change is affected. Maybe it's caused a drought. Maybe it's caused the temperature to go up or down to a point that animal can't handle that heat or can't handle the cold, so they migrate to a different location, and whatever they carry with them, so whatever diseases they carry into that area too. So this is why those three areas of One Health are so important, and encroachment definitely is a huge topic that I'm very familiar with, and more so with spillover. So if you want to explore the topic more, I highly recommend it. Of course, don't forget the links I have posted up here. Don't forget to ask questions and comment down here, and I hope that you do. I'd love to have a conversation about this, and that we're each talking to each other about what maybe we can contribute, how we can help, and what our part of One Health is. And I would highly recommend that you to look into the books by David Quammen, on the one that's called Spillover, or The Chimp in the River, which definitely covers a hypothetical patient zero, the first case, what they believe what a spillover event would have looked like for HIV, and it's just he just does a wonderful job with walking through, so you act like if you feel like you're actually there watching this event take place. So I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for day 16, and I hope you have a wonderful day.